fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to another episode of the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by a very special guest today, former Falcoholic alumnus and current Yahoo Sports draft analyst, man who wears many hats, Charles McDonald at 4Verts. Welcome back to the show. Charles, how you doing?
Thanks. I'm doing good. I'm a little tired. It's been a pretty long draft season from, reporting at the combine, doing all the analyst stuff, still keeping a tab on free agency and all that things. So I feel like I have a well-earned rest, but I can't fully dive into my hibernation without talking about the Falcons real quick. It's like necessary for me at this point.
It's part of the healing process. We have to we have to confront the Falcons, right? But no, I think that they did some positive things in this draft. I know you have a lot of takes on it. So, and also we haven't heard from you on the Falcons offseason as a whole. But let's start with the topic of the day, of course, which is the draft. I know Bijan is a player that you like, or maybe even love the actual player, but the fit for the Falcons and the value and all that. Talk to me about sort of your thoughts on the 8th overall pick.
Well, I mean, just like from a talent standpoint, there's an easy case to make him, or to say at least he's the best player in the draft. Like there's like a 7-minute Bijan highlight tape on that Texas tweeted out that I also tweeted out the other day. And like that's really all you need to see in terms of just like, well, why would they take a running back at 8? Because this guy's different than, all the other guys. And this isn't, something where it's like the Lions taking Jahmyr Gibbs at 12. Bijan Robinson is someone that like he can actually be the foundation of your offense, whether it's just from a running standpoint, from someone who can be an impact in the receiving game. Like he really can do kind of anything you would need him to do on offense. But like from a running perspective, I think you can make the argument that of any team that would need to actually spend premium resources on a running back, the Falcons are probably damn near the bottom of that list, given what we saw last year. I mean, even in terms of like run game stuff, I don't know if there's anyone in the NFL, maybe outside of like Kyle Shanahan, who's better than Arthur Smith. You even have the offensive line kind of overachieving a little bit last year compared to like the overall talent level. We got a 1,000-yard season now, Tyler Algier, who was, kind of dominating by the end of the season. And they've had stints from Cordero Patterson and Caleb Huntley. Obviously, Bijan Robinson's a lot better than all those guys, but when you already get that much production out of your rushing game, I think it's fair to wonder, like, how much more can you actually squeeze from the fruit? But still, like Bijan Robinson in Arthur Smith's offense, he's gonna absolutely rake. Like the only way that this ends up bad is if he, knock on wood, gets an injury or something, or the offensive line just takes like a huge step back, because it's setting up for him to get over 300 touches this season, I would imagine. He's going to be a focal point in the offense. And it's hard to say, like when you watch him play, to say that, putting this guy in the Falcons offense was a bad idea, right? It's hard to say it was a bad idea. I just would have used the resources a little bit different. But he's so good, like you almost have to just kind of get over it.
Yeah, no, I agree with pretty much everything you said. And I think it's a valid argument that, how big was the actual need for Bijan? And I think to justify this pick, obviously he has to be really good, which I'm not really concerned about that, but I think they almost need to get more out of him than a typical running back too. Like Arthur Smith's talked a lot about how he wants to use him as this receiver as well and all this stuff. And I think that's really interesting. And maybe that's where we'll go next here. But real quick, I want to thank today's sponsor, betonline.ag, your number one source for all your sports betting needs, including info, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds and lines for this year's NBA playoffs, or perhaps you love the Bijan pick, right? Feeling overly confident in the Falcons? You can bet on Atlanta to win the NFC South right now, or even go totally crazy and bet on the NFC Championship or Super Bowl. Not that I would advise that, but no matter what you do, BetOnline is always your sports information headquarters this season, as they've got you covered for all your sports wagering needs, whether that's basketball, MLB, NHL, hockey, all the way to UFC and boxing. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games you can play right from your home. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Be sure to use our promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. Yeah, Charles, what do you think, on the topic of Bijan and potentially being used as, this positionless player that Arthur Smith likes to talk about? If you pull up Bijan and Deebo Samuel as an example, athletically, they're very, almost exactly the same player. Obviously, Bijan more of a runner, Deebo more of a receiver that became somewhat of a runner. But I wonder if they sort of see Bijan is getting a lot more touches in the receiving game than a normal sort of bell cow running back would.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And then that's kind of how you can also keep Tyler Algier to be part of the equation, which I know they have interest in doing. We'll see how feasible that is once the season starts. But I think even his presence, Algier's presence, gives you the flexibility to put Bijan out there, right? At whether it's a slot receiver or maybe you want to do some jet stuff where you're got a motion across the line of scrimmage, you're just handing it off we've kind of seen other disciples from that tree do. But he's still going to be the running back, the main runner. He's going to get that ball a ton. I remember when that pick was made, I just thought about the stretch last year. I forget what game it was where they ran the ball 14 times in a row or something like that. We're going to run the piss out of the ball.
I think it was against the Browns. Yeah.
I think it's the Browns. That's what I would expect the Falcons offense to kind of resemble next year. But I will say I do think it's good that they brought up the receiving stuff with Bijan, because as much as I like the fit from just a player to scheme fit, it's perfect. But they do need to throw the ball a little bit more than they did last year. They have to, and maybe their confidence in Ritter will allow that. But I think there were too many times last year where you have a bad play in the passing game and they kind of overcommit to the run. But you've drafted a tight end, a wide receiver, and a running back who can function as a wide receiver in certain sets. You got to start throwing the ball a little bit more than you did last year. That's the only critique that I would really emphasize for the team moving forward. You don't need to get so run heavy. You have a quarterback you somewhat believe in. You got two receiving targets out there that are potentially dominant. Let's throw the ball a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, you brought up Ritter, so I do want to touch on that because I haven't really gotten your take on anything. I know you were super pro Lamar, and I was actually very pro Lamar early on, and then I felt like the discourse became very exhausting at a certain point. But obviously Lamar returns to the Ravens, which makes you wonder, was he ever actually available? But what do you think about the decision to roll with Ritter so publicly and without even, Taylor Heineke, I think, is a guy that could have potentially pushed Ritter in camp and given us a competition, but they decided to do away with all that. So what do you think with how they're sort of setting up the quarterback room this offseason?
It's fine. I think, look, if you had decided that you weren't going to make a trade up for one of those guys, or what could have happened there, I'm not saying this did, I don't know what happened, but you try to trade up and the Colts are no, we're taking a quarterback here. Or the Texans, no, we're taking a quarterback here, and you don't want to go crazy trading for number 3. If you want to stay at 8, pass on Will Levis. I'd rather roll with Ritter than take Will Levis at 8.
Yeah.
I don't think Levis is I don't think Ritter. He might not be one of these guys has Anthony Richardson style upside, but I think he has upside to be an above average quarterback, and that's at least worth investing in for now. So I think they should give him the reins. As much as I'm cool with having Taylor Heineke as a backup. We've seen that as a starter.
Yeah.
I know it's not good enough. It's at least I can kind of hope and see I got something in Ritter.
Yeah.
Taylor, if things goes wrong, he can kind of keep the ship afloat. But I think them committing to Ritter kind of suggests that they want something a little bit more than Taylor Heineke can offer as far as the starting quarterback goes, which is
Yeah.
good, which is good.
Yes, that's good. Let's aim higher. Yeah. Like, I love Taylor Heineke. He's a fun guy, and I think he's a really good backup. Like, he's more than capable of like going 500, basically winning you games while he has to play in case of an injury. But if you go into the season with him as your just unquestioned starter, like, I just don't think there's a lot of upside for your year. But as a backup who has a lot of experience, I think he fits the scheme well, moves well, all that stuff. Like, he makes a lot of sense, and obviously not crazy expensive either. So, I like the signing there. I think he'll be a good mentor for Ritter, but like you said, I think it was wise to aim higher. And I think Ritter does have a higher ceiling there. I think just like the hate that Ritter seems to get from the national media is just odd. Like why is Sam Howell not getting dunked on? Like, he's a 5th-round pick. Maybe just nobody cares about the Commanders. Maybe that's it. I don't know. But
that's it. That's exactly it. You think no one cares about the Falcons, but like people really don't care about the Commanders unless it's like Dan Snyder doing something.
Yeah. So maybe that's the secret all along. People love to dunk on the Falcons. We know. I mean, we're gluttons for punishment, so we understand that. But it's
we know what it is at this point. I don't get offended when people make fun of the Falcons. Like I watch the games too. I know how stupid it is, but I'm still here.
We're still here. Yep. They can't get if 28. If that
I'm not gonna lie to myself.
Yeah, if that unholy number didn't get rid of us, then nothing will at this point. So we're clearly diehards.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if you're still here after 28-3, it should be really easy for you to be honest with yourself about where this team is and isn't.
Yeah, the collapses just don't hurt the same anymore. I just don't get as upset as I used to. Yeah, it changed us. It changed us. I don't know if it's for the better, but it definitely changed us. But back to the draft. Matthew Bergeron in the 2nd round. I know that surprised a lot of people. Adnan and I actually ended up predicting that on our final live mock draft. Because I've seen him play in Syracuse a lot. I think he has a lot of upside at guard. He looked really good at guard at the Senior Bowl. It is a trench pick, so that should make some people happy, right? But what do you think about Bergeron? Do you think he might be the left guard starter this year, or do you think it's going to be a longer term plan for him?
I would imagine he's going to be starting left guard this year. I think what makes him interesting is like he's one of those guys that can kind of give you a little bit of contract flexibility for next year if like you decide if you decide you want to move up from Jake Matthews. I think next year is when they can start making a decision on that. He's a guy that at least has the potential to move out there, but I think for the immediate concerns, he's going to play guard. I think he's going to be probably your day one starter at guard. I mean, come on, it's competition, isn't it? Like, I would say this. If he's not the day one starter at guard, we should be alarmed because he doesn't have a whole lot of competition as far as that position goes. And trading up to like the top of the 2nd round is not exactly like a small thing to give up. And the Falcons, they were one of those teams that were trying to trade back into the bottom of the 1st round on Thursday night. So maybe that could have been for Bergeron. I don't know if like, whoever they were targeting in that range was Bergeron or wasn't, but we do know that they were trying to trade back into the bottom of the 1st round, and the Chiefs told them no, and they took the pass rusher from Kansas State. So clearly this is someone they value pretty highly. Came out and said he's going to be a guard. If you look at like his little relative athletic score thing as a guard, he's going to be one of the more athletic guys there in the NFL. And I think he's a good scheme fit at guard just because I think he's a better run blocker right now than he is pass blocker. He's got a little mean streak to him, but it's the athleticism in space, I think, that makes him really enticing. So, when they try to get Ritter involved in some of these quarterback run plays, I think he's going to be a pretty big component of how successful those are.
Yeah, no, I think Bergeron's kind of underrated. I know there was the Cowboys, war room stuff where they were considering taking Bergeron at 26. And I'm not a Mozzie Smith guy, at least not in the 1st round. So I definitely think Bergeron would have been a better pick for them. But I think fans are going to be really happy with this pick very quickly. He's so nasty in the run game, and he's big too. Like, the Falcons are getting a big line. I mean, Dahlman's really the only one that's on the smaller side now. And I think, if you believe the rumors that they were potentially interested in Paris Johnson at 8, Bergeron makes perfect sense because he's just like a lighter version of Paris Johnson. He's a tackle that they're probably going to play at guard for a couple of years and then see if he can potentially give them that tackle flexibility. Whether that's Jake Matthews rides off into the sunset or Caleb McGarry isn't exactly giving them the value. I mean, the fact that he's only making $11.5 million somehow definitely makes that value proposition a little bit easier to hit for him. But I like the pick. I think he's really good. I think he's really smart. This is a guy that basically came from Canada football and started at like a Division I ACC school at tackle immediately in his true freshman year. So he's a quick study. Obviously really talented. So excited about that pick for sure. The third rounder, Zach Harrison at edge, was a guy that I had actually thought about for the Falcons, but never actually mocked them. But you think about it, kind of like Tyree Wilson light, in terms of being a big athletic guy. But what do you think about the Harrison pick? It is an edge pick for everyone clamoring for edge rushers. So,
yeah, I mean, it's an edge pick. I don't know how much this guy's ever going to be as like a pass rusher, but I think he definitely helps like their goal of just being like a bigger, more physical team. This isn't this isn't like, and I love Dan Quinn, so I'm not trying to like shit on him here, but like this isn't we're stockpiling 230-pound edge defenders that like they were doing the previous regime. I remember talking to some fans like before the draft, is Nolan Smith an option at 8? No, don't think so. I look at the body types that Ryan Nielsen coached with the Saints and some of the guys that they've tried to acquire this year. I don't think like someone like Nolan Smith fits into those plans. I honestly think like as we move forward, someone like Arnold Ebiketie is probably going to be like the smallest like defensive lineman that you see them at. So Zach Harrison, he's like 6'5", 270. He's got long arms. He's one of those just like a heavy-handed run defender. It got some power to him. But I think like as far as a pass rush, he's more of a pocket pusher than someone who's going to be like out here, making things happen off the edge, which is why he's available in the third round. You don't have to get super high expectations here, but like just as kind of like a sledgehammer defensive end who or who you can at least trust to like hold the end against an offensive tackle. I think that's how he's going to get on the field, and I think it's going to be like one of these dirty work edges. Don't get a whole lot of praise, don't rack up a whole lot of numbers, but they kind of end up being integral to your defense at the end of the day. Yeah,
I think this one in particular, I think he's a Calais Campbell backup, right? For when you want that similar size out there at big end. I think he's also
I think he's kind of got a similar play style to Calais, right? Like old man Calais, where Tyree was someone where you can we could potentially stand Tyree up on the edge. Like that's kind of what athleticism is. We're not talking about something like that, but like if you want to kick him down inside a 3 technique or even play like one in like a dime set or something, I think that could be a plan for him. Like if you're trying to move him all over the place. Like as far as the play style, I think that's like your long-term Calais Campbell kind of guy.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously not peak Calais Campbell. That was sort of just a one-of-one player, but as someone who can, I think this is your Ade Ogundeji replacement. I think the writing's sort of on the wall for him at this point. Wasn't, he was, here to be our run defending edge, and just it did not work out. So you get Zach Harrison in here instead. And like at this point, like the edge room is so full of guys. Like, I mean, spoiler alert for my 53-man roster. Like I might have them keeping 6 edge rushers just because like, I don't think they're going to cut Malone. I don't think they're going to cut Harrison, but they're also not going to cut any of the guys they signed. Like, I mean, Bud Dupree's contract is basically, $2.5-3 million guaranteed. So, some people are going to be inactive, but at least it means we don't have to pull somebody up off the practice squad the second we get an injury. So, the depth hopefully will help, even if it's not star-studded. They at least have like this 6-man deep rotation of guys that are actual starting caliber NFL edge rushers. So that's a refreshing change from, I'm trying to even remember some of the guys we saw out there the last couple of years, Steven Means, no offense, but,
yeah.
That was pretty rough when he was playing more than 50% of the snaps, but, Yeah, the next pick might actually be my favorite one with Clark Phillips. I was just shocked that he's lasted that long. I mean, I know he's small, but what do you think about the Clark Phillips pick?
That was one of my favorite picks in the class. I feel like everyone kind of has that pick, right? But uh, anytime you can find like someone who can actually start as a rookie in the fourth round at a position like cornerback, it's pretty hard to be upset or even like really critical of that pick. So I think I'm pretty sure that was my when I brought it up this weekend. I brought up so much I don't remember exactly. I think that was my favorite pick for the Falcons draft because you talk around people. There are people who had like high round 2 grades on him. I think the consensus was closer to a day 2 player than where he went early round 4. So I think it was a good bit of value. And like, look, this is probably the most like I'll call it intriguing Falcons CB trio that we've had in some time. We got one guy who we know is good, and AJ Terrell, and then you kind of have 2 wild cards that are like credible prospects at cornerback in Okuda and Clark Phillips. I'm not saying that either one of them are like necessarily like definitely going to hit, but at least you have a realistic snapshot of what they look like as successful players in the NFL. So
yeah,
they're moving in the right direction. Is it a good defense? I don't know. Probably not. But could it be like the 20th best defense? Maybe. Would that be like a top 3 Falcons defense in the past 15 years? Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we could even sniff average, Charles. We could sniff average for the first time since 2017, I think, with this defense. So
yeah. Yeah.
It's a big step.
I was talking about to someone yesterday, and they were like, wait, so this Falcons defense, like, well, it could be maybe around 20, right? And I was like, yeah. And that would literally be like one of the best defenses they've had since Michael Vick was the quarterback. Yep. And they didn't believe me, and they looked it up, and they're like, holy shit. Like, you guys are playing a different sport over there on defense. Yes, they are.
Yes, we were. Yep. With all those defenses, it's crazy that like we're gonna start having a good defense, when we're back under an offensive head coach. So, hey, look at us. Who would have thought, right?
Yeah.
But no, I love the Clark Phillips pick. I think he's gonna find his way onto the field like early. I don't think you can keep him off. He hasn't played a lot of slot. I know people have just like penciled him into the slot, but I sort of wonder if like. Obviously, DJ Reed, who I think he's currently with the Jets, like sort of a very unique player. But I do wonder if Clark Phillips can be like, they're measurables wise very, very similar players. I think DJ Reed does have longer arms a little bit, so that obviously helps. But sort of like really feisty, smaller corners that just refuse to move to the slot and just play outside at a high level. So I wonder if that could be his potential upside if he does stay outside.
Look, I'm not opposed to any. As long as AJ is starting, I don't care. Like, try whatever you need to try over there because it's been a rotating door the entire time. I would, based on what I saw from Clark in college, this is kind of like a Matthew Bergeron situation where it's like, if you're not on the field, your competition is not that strong, man. Casey Hayward's not here anymore. I'm not even sure like they've really
UCF legend Mike Hughes, Charles.
Oh yeah.
I can never slander Mike Hughes. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot that they signed Mike Hughes. So I mean, look, maybe Clark ends up as a CB4, but I do think there's a pretty good chance your best 3 is AJ, Jeff, assuming Jeff is healthy, because I do think there's some concern with like the back half of the season he had last year. The start was really good, but he kind of lost some steam. But I think your best 3 are probably going to be AJ, Jeff, and then Clark. And we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I even if Clark is your CB4 this year, that's a really, really good CB4 because he's going to have to play at some point. So, we'll see who hops in and who ends up starting. But I think for the first time, it's like, oh, we can't just like pencil in some guy that we're very uncomfortable with as CB3. So, there's at least some depth there now. That seems to be the theme of this offseason, honestly, is just let's fill the roster with guys that at least we feel like, oh, he's okay. Oh yeah, he's fine. Yeah. Instead of like, oh God, he's starting.
Yeah. When you have some assets back, it's crazy what you can kind of do with your team when you're not You when you don't have $80 million worth of dead cap sitting on your roster when you can't do anything with it. So,
Yeah.
look, I think they kind of had the offseason I was hoping them to have. I don't think it was a very pretty free agency market, but they made the best of it. You signed in Chris Lindstrom, got McGarry back in the fold, got Jesse Bates. Like, as far as free agency stuff goes, it's probably like three of the most important moves you had to make this year, and they got all three of them. And then like the rest of the time, like you get to see like this is what having cap space looks like. You get to restack like the middle class of your roster, which the Falcons had absolutely none of over the past 2 years. So you got depth, you got a couple of high-end starters. I think it's been a pretty productive offseason for them.
Yeah. I mean, I think the way the Falcons went about it was very smart too. It's still a lot of 1-year deals. And I think fans look at that. It's like, oh, well, now your roster, like we're terrified that the roster, like, what's going to happen next year? Well, it's like they could re-sign these guys. But if you have a lot of 1-year deals, you have a lot of free agents hitting the market and therefore a lot of opportunities for comp picks. Obviously, this year they weren't going to get any because they were signing so many people in general. But, I do think that Fontenot has mentioned, like, he wants to build this sort of the Ozzie Newsome style where they're getting a lot of comp picks and getting a lot of, late day 2, early day 3 comp selections and having just this constant cycle of a lot of rookies every single year. And I love that strategy. I hope they could get there, but they're still in the early process of that. Like, you have to like get the players and develop them. Then you start collecting the comp picks. Like, so we're like very much, halfway through now, but
I'll say this about like where like kind of ownership views where this regime is right now. They are pretty shocked to have 14 wins over the first 2 years of this, just based on like the actual players that were being put on the field. And I think when you look at just like their win-loss stuff, like a lot of one-score games, that just it mainly just reflects like you didn't have the players to kind of be pulling away. And I think now to me is like when like the real evaluation starts for Terry and Arthur, right? Because it's kind of hard to have like huge moving beliefs either way when if I give you $1 and I tell you to turn it, I'll give you $1 and you got to turn it to $100. It's going to be difficult on just about anybody. So I think as far as the evaluation goes, this is probably somewhat closer to year one as far as like when can we start the clock on them talking about them like getting fired or something like that. This is probably year one of that process. So they bought themselves a lot of leeway, honestly, over the past 2 years with how that's gone. I'm not sure how fans are going to take that, but that's where they are. These guys aren't going anywhere anytime soon, and we should probably give them a little bit of time just to see what this vision looks like, because this is the first year where they've 100% been able to have just their fingerprints all over it.
Yeah, no, and I 100% agree. And as fans, like we're media now as well, obviously, but we're still fans of the Falcons. So it's like, I understand guys like being impatient, and not having a great product out there. But you look at a lot of things, right? Like, how many 1-score games are you in? The Falcons, the first year, were on the plus side of that, where they were winning a lot of those 1-score games. Then they had a regression in that area, obviously, last year, where they lost a lot of those 1-score games. But now they're, the potential for just the positive 1-score regression this year is there. Plus the roster getting a lot better. You look at this from that angle, and this is a team that you should probably expect to win maybe 3 or more games, than last year. So, I mean, I would probably be predicting 10-7 at this point. And that's probably enough to win the NFC South, for being honest.
I mean, hell yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, what do you think sort of as a whole? And if you want to touch on the 7th round picks, you're welcome to. I don't know if you had any big takes on those guys, but just
yeah. The only thing I have on the 7th round guys is the DeMarco Helms as a Georgia fan. He had a really annoying interception in one of those title games. So that's all I got.
Yeah.
So hopefully he can bring that. Okay, I will say the highlight clip that they tweeted out when they picked it was pretty fun. It's knocking some dude's heads off. So hopefully he makes the team.
I think he will. Yeah. They don't really have a fourth safety, and he can play both safety spots and slot. So I think he's definitely got a really good chance at the roster as that just like physical enforcer. They don't really have a safety like that where they just have that big physical dude just for run defense, and some short area stuff. So I do think he has a pretty good chance. And he's really smart. If you lead Alabama in tackles and Nick Saban puts you all over the secondary, it means you're a smart guy. So I think he will make it. I do think that pick. I think he could be like maybe a better Kamal Ishmael, another UCF legend, Kamal Ishmael. So
oh yeah, just throwback.
Yeah, I love me some Kamal Ishmael. But yeah, just you mentioned it, but like as a whole, looking at the totality of moves this offseason and sort of where we are. Obviously, we haven't gotten to OTAs or anything like that, so I'm not asking you, for like, oh well, who's gonna make the roster? But like as a whole, like, do you think that they've like done enough? Have they moved the needle enough to be legitimate NFC South contenders at least, or do you think even potentially beyond that?
Let's not get crazy with the beyond that. Right? we saw the draft the Eagles just put together, and they were just in the Super Bowl. So, look, this team they still have a ways to go before they can get to that level. But, dude, playoffs should be the expectation for this team this year, especially when you look at the rest of the division. I mean, there's no reason not to have that expectation put on them. And can they compete, or should they be expected to compete in the NFC South? I mean, they did last year, right?
Yeah.
I know. I thought it was very fraudulent. They were not a good team last year, but record-wise, like they were in it until the last, I think, like month of the season or so. Maybe even the last like 2 or 3 weeks of the season is when they actually got eliminated. So
yeah,
that should be the expectation this year. I think this is going to be the year where we kind of move away from like, wow, Arthur Smith's offense is, the designs are so cool and everyone's getting open, to the year where it's actually like productive in a manner. I think Ritter's going to be a big upgrade over what Mariota offered as a passer. We'll see the run game, because I do think Mariota got a little underrated there by the fan base, but still, like what he can open up in the passing game for them, it's not like a complicated picture. It's not even like Mariota was like missing reads so often. He was just missing the throws, man. Like that was the problem. Like guys would be wide open, and he's airmailing it. So if you can just cut down some of that, I kind of expect the production to really, really take off, like in a way where the statistics say this is one of the best offenses in the NFL.
Yeah, no, and like to Mariota's credit, like early on, like the first like 6 games that he played, like he was actually doing a good job. Like the Falcons were a top 10 offense briefly there. Like he looked like he was running it. He was comfortable. He was running the football really effectively. I don't know what happened. I don't know if he felt like Ritter breathing down his neck, or like it seemed like a mental thing where he just sort of stopped, like he just lost his confidence, and it fell apart very quickly. Yeah,
he got erratic as hell towards the end of the year. I don't know what the deal was there. He was never really going to be the long-term quarterback unless he had just went supernova last year. So I don't know. Maybe he was pressing to try and save like whatever last little bit he could of being a starting quarterback in the NFL. But he made some wild plays, like especially the Thursday night Panthers game is the beacon, but there's more in there. There's more in there.
No, it's sad because I liked him. I think everyone liked him. The way it ended just felt really crappy. So I mean, good luck to him in Philly. Obviously, I can't say that he didn't get the better end of that deal necessarily, going to Philly to be their backup. But I agree with you. I think Ritter's gonna be able to deliver the ball. Like Ritter is just fearless with the ball, like to where Mariota I think has just sort of learned to be very conservative with it. Ritter is not afraid to just rip it, and you saw them make a lot of plays because of that with him and Drake London, where he was like, whatever, Drake London's down there, go get it, buddy, and he did. And that's Kyle Pitts' game. Like, throw that thing up for Kyle Pitts. He's streaking downfield. You just got to toss it, and Mariota just couldn't hit him. It was very frustrating, as I'm sure you're well aware. So I think at the very least, Ritter will be able to hit some of those plays that the Mariota just wouldn't take, or that couldn't hit. And then, they've also set this up to where they don't need Ritter to do a ton. Like, you have two really good options on the outside where I expect Kyle Pitts to play a lot, in Drake London and Kyle Pitts. You've got Jonnu Smith, who I think is a super underrated addition to this team. Like, he was just Arthur Smith's red zone super weapon that last year in Tennessee with 8 touchdowns. And then you got Bijan and Tyler Algier and Cordell Patterson just to throw it. Like, you could just put in Cordell Patterson for goal line, like whatever. Like, and he's totally fresh. So they've got a lot. Like, it hasn't been all receivers, and I think that's where the sort of fantasy crowd and the national media is like, oh, the Falcons don't. Mac Hollins and Scotty Miller. They're gonna have 2 receivers out there at most on most plays. So like, they're not emphasizing that position as much as the rest of the NFL. They are emphasizing tight end and running back in a lot of interesting formations. So I think it's going to be a much more effective offense than people are thinking, and precisely because they're not just doing what every other team is doing out there.
Yeah, and honestly, I think listening to them in the press conferences, it makes me think Cordell might be safe for this year, because I thought after the season he was a goner for sure. But he's still here, which obviously every day you're still in the roster increases your chance of making the roster once we get close to August. And look, like, usually when we get like these high pick draft prospects where guys are established at their position, we usually see those guys get shipped off. Like, we just saw DeAndre Swift get traded a day after the Lions picked Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round. So I think the fact that Cordell Patterson is still here, combined with their comments on like being a positionless football team, I think he's probably going to end up sticking around this year. And then, like, you get into, I think, like, the game that the Falcons are trying to play on offense is like, we're trying to make an offense like is almost impossible to match up to, right? Because you can even go back to I think it was the Dolphins game in Arthur's first year where they went down to Miami and they won on the field goal or whatever. Mm-hmm. There's plays like where they're running like 22 personnel out of shotgun, right? Where you got like Cordell Patterson in the slot, Kyle Pitts out wide. And you can really start tinkering with that, I think, with the skill sets that you have, right? So Cordell Patterson has wide receiver experience, he's got running back experience. Bijan Robinson can play in the slot from time to time, but he's an ace running back. You got Kyle Pitts, who can split time between tight end, slot, and wide receiver. Drake London can split time between slot and wide receiver. They've got a lot of guys on offense who can do a whole lot of different things. And I think, like, dude, like, we could easily see sets where, like, they're running 31 personnel with Bijan, Cordell, and Tyler Algier still on the field, and that 31 personnel could come out of shotgun snaps where you have Cordell and Bijan set outside. Like, and if you're a defense, how do you match up to that? They came out with 3 running backs. So do we want to match that with linebackers? Next thing you know, we're spread out against guys who have like legit receiving abilities. It's going to be tough to match up against. And I think that like Arthur Smith is one of those guys that can probably squeeze the most out of this. And like we talked about earlier, Ritter, like you just got to make the throws, because I don't think that the picture is going to be that hard for you to figure out this year.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, even if it doesn't like take off to like being a top 10 offense or something crazy. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Like, it's going to be unique. And that's underrated, right? We haven't had a lot of fun the last couple of years, so we'll at least get that, I think. But all Ritter has to do this year is just get the ball to his guys. Like, he just has to get it to him. I don't think Arthur Smith is going to, like, and that's been a criticism of Arthur Smith, is that, he doesn't have these complicated route designs. He doesn't have all this. He doesn't need it. Like, he doesn't want it to be super complicated for the quarterback. He just needs the quarterback to hit the guy that's open, make a couple reads, find where the one-on-one coverage is, and go, right? And really for Ritter, I think for him, it's just know when to take off, like know when to run. You run a 4.5. You're like one of the fastest quarterbacks in the NFL. Look around and know, like, because last year he seemed really uncomfortable when he had to run. Like, just So just like learn when to just take off, right?
Take off. Don't get yourself pummeled up there, because you're not the biggest guy. You're fast, but you're not the biggest guy. He's not even really built like Mariota was. So, look, I think need to temper expectations here a little bit. Ritter his first game will be start number 5, right? So, got to temper expectations a little bit. even as good as Bijan is, he's probably going to need a little bit of time to get just acclimated to what it's like being an NFL player. Kyle Pitts coming back from injury, so it might take a little bit of time to get off the ground, but all the pieces are here for them to be, at least a top 10 offense. So I think we talked about expectations before. The expectation should be to win the NFC South and for Ritter to take that step and for this to be one of the best offenses in the league. So we'll see what happens, but I think that those are very fair expectations to have upon them.
Yeah, I agree. I think they probably should be the favorite in the NFC South, unless you're just all about Derek Carr and that Saints roster. That's just they feel so much like the 2018 Falcons to me, like just loaded down with all these big contracts and aging veterans, and then they just sort of go for these like stopgap moves that just I don't think are going to work. So now I'm obviously a Saints hater, so I'm taking the negative approach to whatever they're doing over there. But the Bucs are going to be starting either Kyle Trask or Baker Mayfield. The Panthers. I mean, maybe the Panthers are somehow the other team to watch, like depending on how quickly Bryce Young gets settled. But even then, I mean that wide receiver room isn't particularly good. So I mean they've got work to do as well. I mean that defense is certainly something, but. It really could be the Falcons and the Panthers just completely, turn it around this year. So,
yeah, we'll see. The Bryce Young, I think Bryce Young is a good prospect. The Bryce Young Brian Burns picture is also burning to my mind. He looked like an actual toddler, and Brian Burns is not the biggest guys that it's going to be chasing after. So we'll see.
Yeah. I love Bryce Young. He's a cool dude. I love his tape, but yeah, he's got to prove that he's the outlier essentially. I think he can do it, but it's gonna be tough for him, and I just hope he can stay healthy. That's the thing when you're that small. So, Charles, it's been a lot of fun. Really appreciate you coming on and getting your takes on the Falcons. We'll definitely have to do this more than once a year going forward. But guys, he's Charles McDonald at 4 Verts. Anything you want to plug, man?
You can go read all my draft stuff on Yahoo Sports. I did a lot this year between mock drafts, player rankings. We were on the Jalen Carter beat for a little bit this offseason, just trying to talk to teams and project his draft status. So I think the reporting there ended up turning out pretty right. Well, I remember when I forget who it was. I think it was like Mike Sando. He had the report that Jalen Carter was going to fall to the top 10. And I was like, nope. Did some reporting, and everyone's like, nope, not true. Yep. Not happening. The only thing that's going to make him fall for real is like the quarterback push to the top of the draft. Like if there weren't 3 quarterbacks taken before him, we would have gone a little bit higher. So I think we do a pretty good quality of work over there. Just check out my report, my colleagues, Charles Robinson, Jory Epstein. We've had a lot of fun over there this year, and I'm looking forward to hopefully many more years working with them. So it's been a pretty good ride at Yahoo so far.
Yeah, good stuff over there for sure. Definitely check out Yahoo Sports, guys. I know it may not be the first name that always comes to mind, but they've been doing good work over there for quite a while now. So definitely check them out. And of course, guys, I'm Kevin I at Falcoholic Kevin. Please do like and subscribe if you're enjoying the show on YouTube. Leave us that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Follow the show at Falcoholic Live and join us on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern for the live show. But otherwise, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. We'll see you next time. Once again, thanks to our sponsor. The show is presented by Bet Online, and we will see you guys next time. Have a great day, folks.